Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. And today we have with us Annissa Deshpande, who's the founder of lōglab, who helps companies modernize HR. Annissa, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here.
So I think that it's interesting how these two words are next to each other, and I think many people are like, really? Modernize and HR? Because I think a lot of people think of HR as like a necessary evil, but if you can modernize it, I'm sure that you've got in store for us a lot of things that people can benefit from. So I'm interested in learning about what you do, and I know we want to talk about your brand new book as well, but give us a little bit of your background and your entrepreneurial journey.
Sure. So actually my tagline is HR sucks, but it doesn't have to. And so and it's because everybody has this feeling of, gosh, do I really have to go talk to my HR person whenever they have a problem? So we'll get more into that. But my background, I have 25 years of experience in HR, IT, finance, and strategy. I founded lōglab back in 2015, and prior to lōglab, I was working as a global talent executive at a Fortune 500, where I was responsible for hiring over 20,000 people annually in 150 countries and building talent initiatives that drove business results. And I loved this concept that we were working on. So everything from performance to succession to recruiting, how are we doing this in a way where we're actually aligning to the business goals and driving those results? And so I really enjoyed this concept, and I thought it would be great to do this for smaller companies. So I left my corporate job in 2015, founded lōglab, and our mission is to modernize HR. And when I say modernize HR, what I mean is that we want to grow revenue and create a place where people love to work. And so we essentially have three service offerings, I should say. The first is fractional chief people officer services, which we provide big company kind of HR thinking, strategic guidance, helping companies really figure out how to compete against tech giants, smaller companies, and we mostly focus on emerging growth, investor-backed companies. And then we also do HR coaching for emerging leaders in the HR space who are trying to shift their mindset from a traditional compliance cost center mindset to a revenue enabler, business enabler, and a modern HR approach. And finally, we do a lot of content.
Yeah, to me, that's novel because I think that a lot of people feel like, you hear about marketing is not a cost, it's an investment. And that's a true statement, but you don't hear that kind of comment about HR. You look at it like, let's just get the hiring and firing taken care of, and that's about it. Thank you so much. Go back to your cubicle.
Yeah, there's a lot, right? I mean, I think in this world, in the modern economy, I should say, people are a competitive advantage. So having the right talent, competing for that talent in a smart and strategic way, I mean, HR has to take a real external focus, which it hasn't had to do in the past. And there's other forces in the market like Glassdoor and reputational things that HR now has to work through in a much more public way. And so a lot of that can be tools that you use to actually think about your HR strategy and take a much more modern approach to aligning it to what you're trying to do from a business perspective.
So something that always comes to my mind when I think of HR, and I'll ask your opinion to see if this is valid, and I'm sure there's numbers you can put to it, but the thinking is, when you have someone that leaves your firm, it is a massive cost. So employee retention might feel like, oh, we need to keep people happy, yay, but it actually is tied to a monetary gain through the lens of not costing money. Where does it cost money when you have someone that leaves?
Yeah, I mean, turnover, I tell my clients all the time, turnover is profit that walks out the door.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you have churn from a job not being done, you have productivity issues, you have recruiting costs. It's just money. So like when companies are bleeding people, I often say to them, you can't walk into, I tell the HR person, you can't walk into a leadership meeting and just say, hey, turnover is this, and we have a plan to think about what it is, what's causing it down the line. Like it's the equivalent of the CFO walking into a leadership meeting and saying, hey, we're burning cash, but we'll figure out why in another couple of months and then deal with it.
Yeah, like, no, hold up.
Problem.
Yep.
Yeah. So it is something that, and don't get me wrong, some turnover is always good for a company, right? There's
Sure.
a healthy amount of turnover that you want to see in a company. But when you start to see high numbers and just the forces that are in play today with what they're calling the Great Resignation and people just looking for some type of change in their life after 18 months of being locked down or limited because of the pandemic, I mean, you really have to start to be smart about listening to your employees. It's no different than, I tell my clients often, it is no different than your customers, right? You listen to your customers, you make enhancements to your products or services, right? You're always trying to do something that gets them to buy your product or to stay with you or to retain your customers. You have to apply the same mindset to your employees. You have to be thinking about what it is they're looking for, how you can help them. It doesn't mean that you give in to everything, but you've got to listen to those general themes and structurally fix issues in your culture and your organization to make sure that people want to stay with you and grow with your company.
Yeah, and you were mentioning a little bit ago when I think we were talking about books and things like that, and maybe it was before we started recording the interview here, but Bob Burg and The Go Giver and Built to Sell, really, really great books. Here's another. What you just said reminds me of something that was an aha in another book. Have you ever read the book Giftology by John Rulin?
I have not read Giftology.
Okay, so anyone listening or you, go get the book Giftology by John Rulin,
Okay.
Ruhlin. I get zero benefit if you do or don't, but it's just a great book. And the gist of it is he teaches people how to strategically gift, right? So it's the science of giftology. And, for the purpose of getting more business and expanding your brand and all of that, right? And it's not just tchotchkes or, here's pins with my logo. He takes a really unique approach and teaches you how to give really spectacular gifts to wow your strategic alliances, networks, clients. But one of the things, what I interviewed him a couple times on my podcast, and this was just such an aha, because he goes, let me tell you where you start. His company and the companies that he advises, we start not with where is the low-hanging fruit, who can we gift these cool gifts to so we get whatever, right? Because like Bob Burg's book, you got to be the go-giver. Okay, so where do we give to get back? He goes, you got to start with your employees, and you better have them on a gifting type of program so that they're not out there going, well, doggone, we're giving all these cool things to our customers, and then you treat me like dirt. So one of the things I remember him saying is, Oliver, and maybe he's changed this and he doesn't do it anymore, but this was the example he gave from that sticks in my mind. He goes, you know what, for many of our employees, we pay for an annual house cleaning service. So we want them to come to work and know that they don't need to, go back home and slave over cleaning their house. Little touches like that. And so I think that goes right along with what you're saying there with employee retention, because if that company is treating their employees well by giving them services like that, or gifts like that, or just plain old good, treatment, you're going to retain them. And then that has a monetary benefit of, we don't have to spend money to, hire someone else or get an employment recruiting firm. But also, you don't have to lose that momentum of that employee, starting to wane in their production before they leave, and then they leave, and then the gap in the time before you place them, there's that whole momentum shift. So what are your thoughts then about like a structured plan for employee retention, more than just a footnote in the business plan? Okay, we need to have a good work culture. Well, what does that really look like,
Yeah, I mean, employee retention is a business problem. And like any business problem, you need a structured approach. And there's a number of different things that you can do. And there's a number of different resources out there to help you. Like, I think one of the things that I think is very underutilized by companies is Glassdoor. I mean, Glassdoor is essentially people telling you exactly what they think. And, you know, a lot of CEOs will dismiss it and say, well, those are just our angry employees. You need to hear what your angry employees are saying, right? And you need to hear what your good employees are saying. So you can use that as a tool to collect information, to look for themes, to look what's happening at your competitors, right? This is all public information. And you can really start to figure out, what do we need to amplify as, you know, in our culture that's attractive to people, and what are the things that we need to fix? And it is, I mean, it's just a wealth of information that I don't think enough companies are utilizing to really, and you also have to respond to those negative reviews. It's like Yelp, right? I mean, you don't see a company just leave a Yelp review out there. They try to address it. And again, you're not giving in to everything that went wrong. You're just providing some additional context. You're addressing it. You may say, look, this is something we're working on. Nobody's perfect, right? But the idea that you can authentically respond, that you can take all those themes and build a strategy together for, you know, how you're going to amplify what's great about your company, you know, fix what's not working. That's really how you start to address the retention issue, when you're willing to deal with it as a business problem and no longer as a footnote.
And I agree with all of that. And you need to be, you need to not be reactionary. You need to, you know, respond in advance so that you're not reacting to those situations. And what you just described is very similar to that. In fact, I forget where I heard this, but IBM Watson, I think, has this AI technology that can predict with high probability of who is getting ready to quit and resign in your organization. And I don't know the specifics, but I would only assume that it has to do with reading and sensing the tone of emails or how fast you respond to bosses or things like that. Well, if you can be ahead of the curve and not react once the resignation comes across your desk, it's too late then. You got to do it up front.
Absolutely. You have so much data available to you, including trends and patterns of people that have left the organization, right? For one of my clients a few years ago, we did an analysis of who was likely to retire, where we predicted who was likely to retire based on looking at retirement trends over the past few years. And, you know, it enabled the company to get ahead of this trend of people. You know, they had a large number of senior employees that had been with the company for a long time that were getting ready to retire. And so it allowed them to do some planning. It allowed them to do some succession, maybe figure out who we needed to develop particular things in so that they would be ready to take on those roles. I think the data and analysis or analytics aspects of HR are largely untapped. Something like only 14% of companies have integrated talent analytics. That's another opportunity. And of course, you can't predict people's patterns with 100% certainty, but you can still get some really good indicators that allow you to get ahead of trends. And that's really what you're looking for in any of this stuff.
100%. And don't just let data sit there, do something with it. So let's wrap up with this question. In your book description, you talk about how this, the story talks about Jen and how she turns HR into a secret weapon. Talk a little bit about how HR can be that secret weapon.
Yeah, so the book is interesting because it's about a private equity-backed manufacturing company that's been in business for a period of time, and they're facing an external competitor, and they're losing market share, right? And they just got this big injection of private equity, and they've got a new CEO, and they're trying to figure out, you know, how do we get back ahead? And so what really looks like what is a business problem, you know, they feel like they shore up the operations, the sales, the marketing right to fix that problem, but their people are lagging behind. And what that looks like is they have high turnover, they have open roles that aren't getting filled, and they have, you know, an HR person who's smart and capable, but not focused on the right things. And so it's the transition that she goes through to stop being more of a cost center compliance, kind of wait to be told what to do, to a real strategic leader where she builds a strategy that enables them to compete with There's a talent competitor in the book, which is called Hydrol. And it's a lot like our tech giants, right? They come in and they start taking the manufacturing company's talent because they have a big distribution and logistics business, and they need the best talent for that, right? And so they just go to a place in Illinois and they start taking this company's talent. So she's got to build a strategy that makes this company attractive to stay at and to really help ensure that they're filling the right roles, they're reducing the turnover, and that they're building a strategy to attract and retain the talent that they need long term. So it's her journey transitioning from more of a traditional HR person to a modern HR thinker and leader.
Awesome. I love it. And if anyone is interested in picking up a copy of the book and also learning more about lōglab, what's the best way that they can reach out and connect with you?
Yeah, my website, which is lōglab.net. I'm also on LinkedIn, Annissa Deshpande. And you can find the book on Amazon. It's called The Comeback by me. And I'm also on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Annissa D.
Awesome. Well, Annissa, thank you so much for coming on today. It was really fun chatting with you.
Fun chatting with you. Thanks, Mike, for having me.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.